IBM's Smarter City initiative is to look at how the systems in a city can interact, so public safety, health, education, citizen services, how they can interact and come together to make a city a better, healthier place for people to live, and a place where businesses can thrive and prosper, so a city can have a sustainable economy and a happy and healthy population.
A smarter city is really going to be one for us in which, first of all, our businesses and our people work in very different ways than we have worked to now. So as much as the Industrial Revolution saw huge changes in the way people socialised, worked, organised their family life and organised their communities, I really see this next opportunity through Smarter Cities being the next revolution, not just in the workplace, but throughout our communities.
The technology to make a city smarter has existed for many years. And actually, there's nothing really new in that. What we're trying to do is bring together the processes, the motivations, the systems that existed in the past, transform them and make them much more integrated. By being more integrated, we can do some more interesting things and actually be able to leverage the synergy benefits that exist across the systems within the city boundaries.
We are, to me, at an inflection point. We do now have the technologies to enable us all to live much better, to enable us all to manage cities better, manage companies better, manage our own lives better. We now need to get that technology out into the environment. So the fact that we can actually change not just lives, but the way we live and the way businesses and cities operate is to me personally very, very exciting.
For the first time, a company that's traditionally an IT supplier has come out with a vision of the future that's almost within our grasp, but more to the point, it transcends talking simply about technology, and it allows people to engage on multi-dimensions. So it's not just about an IT provider providing technology, it's about a vision of society, and I think that really gets people passionate.
A very big part of smart cities is the provision of what we call ecosystem services. These are the collaboration tools and the information that lets people work together, lets businesses innovate together, lets consumers interact with businesses, businesses interact with other businesses, so that we get very different outcomes.
In some essences, you think of a smarter city as just a collection of systems and trying to make each of those systems better. But actually, IBM's point of view is slightly more intricate than that. It's got more depth to it. And what we're trying to look at is, how does a city continue to deliver value on a global scale? What makes that city unique? What makes it special? And how can it sustain and maintain that leadership on a longer term basis?
We're in a very, very competitive world these days. Every city is competing, not just in the UK, but all around the world. And those that are going to come out on top are the ones that are prepared, the ones that are prepared to take action around that preparedness, and the ones that are smart enough to work together in all the areas where they can gain benefit.
The great thing about the Smarter Cities is that we've carried out workshops with city administrators and the people involved, and it's just a whole level of buzz around the table about actually doing something that will really benefit everybody.
It's really trying to change more than one specific thing, it's trying to change everything. It's something that I'm excited about being involved in.
The thing that really excites me is that we can really make a difference for our next generation. This really provides us with putting in place a city-level platform which will allow future generations to continue to be successful and create value for the world in the future.
And it really gives us a way of organising our communities for the future that recognises that we're social animals, that we need to be with each other, but we need to be in a community that has low carbon footprint, that has a high quality of life and provides a range of opportunity for us. And I believe at the heart of it, that's what Smarter City is all about.
In looking at cities, you really are looking at a microcosm of a smarter planet. Everything happens in cities, and if you truly want to make a city smarter, you've got to look at how all of the city systems interact. By systems, I'm not talking about IT infrastructure, we're talking about public safety, we're talking about health, transport, utilities, water management, the lot. It all happens in a city and it all has to come together in an interconnected way to improve the life of citizens in a city and also to make a thriving economy for businesses to work in.
So the big question from an education perspective is, we think of education as the time between 0 and 20 when we go to university and then come out, but actually education is a lifelong activity.
I mean, traditionally, individuals have been at school, they've gone to university, and I remember as a student saying, like, that's the last exam I'll ever do, and you think that's the end of learning, and that is changing.
I think students will have greater control over their education throughout their lives, not just as in an undergraduate or at a school, but as they progress out of that. I think as we're developing a knowledge economy, you'll find that people are far more engaged and looking for ways to further their own education in all sorts of manners as time progresses, I think.
We're going to find that people in the workplace are going to be continually learning, doing more qualifications, whether they're vocational courses, academic courses. It's all going to develop continually.
Cloud computing clearly is raising eyebrows within the education market at the moment. I've had a number of conversations with clients across HE, all of whom recognise that the cloud vision is one that's here to stay, and there's a real benefit for them, both reducing costs and improving service levels.
The smart city does a lot of the work that the police force have had to do on foot in the past. So surveillance systems, safety systems, systems that control where vehicles go, how fast they drive, all of these aspects are part of creating a city that helps the management of citizen safety and citizen security.
The benefit of smarter healthcare is principally to patients. That is to improve the patient experience and to improve patient outcomes. It also helps with the efficiency of the healthcare organisation.
I think one of the big challenges we have in the NHS at the moment is we don't work as a system. So the GPs have one computer system, we have another system, community hospitals have another, mental health trusts have another. And so if we could move towards having one system with one patient record, become a system where the patient was at the centre rather than all these fairly large and complex organisations trying to work together. I think we need better systems to target future planning because we need to know how many beds do we need for how many conditions. We need to know what consultant specialities we need. I think this is where smarter cities, not just smarter healthcare, becomes really interesting because a lot of that information is not just held by us as an NHS, it's held by local authorities as well. So people go through both of our systems. If we could have all the information related to social care, related to school-aged children and how that's going to change, then that could actually make the whole system work hugely better.
The biggest challenges are the money flows. So today, a lot of the decisions are made by people who are doing the best they can given the systems that have been put around them. And the challenge we have now is asking ourselves, well, why are those systems still appropriate for the future? How do we change them in a way which doesn't undermine some of the fundamental principles of safety, security, citizenship, but still allows us to be effective, optimized, and be able to really succeed in the global landscape?
A city is a complex system of systems, and at the end of the day, IBM is well known for our ability to run large systems integration projects. Our middleware capability, the open standards, the interoperability, Our scalability, cross-platform support really put us in a great position to start to handle the types of challenge that a city needs to address, whether that be integrated water, transport, energy, you name it, across the multiple problem spaces that a city faces today.
But many of the solutions need new ideas and new thinking more than they need new technology. We've got the component pieces. It's a question of working across the boundaries between organisations so that we can re-engineer this system of systems to work in a different way.
It's about us thinking in different ways to respond to a different opportunity, and that sometimes is the hardest challenge of all. So it's often not the resource base, it's often not even the scale of it, it's thinking in new ways about how to do this.
So in the UK, Smarter Energy is helping to overcome 3 problems that we face as a country. The first is energy security, the second is climate change, and the third is balancing the supply of energy with the demand for energy.
There's a combination of measures that need to be implemented. The electricity that's delivered from the grid will also need to decarbonise at quite a rapid rate, and to be perfectly honest with you, we don't really have a choice in what we implement. We have to do absolutely everything we can possibly think of.
When you look across the UK energy system, it's critical that you look at power, heat and transport all together. We didn't used to do that, we didn't have to, but in the future world, getting CO2 emissions down, we have to look at the 3 together. A major part of the power system is the distribution grid and how we actually get power into millions of homes and millions of businesses. Today that's done with a relatively sophisticated system, but we're going to have to move to a whole new world of what's being called a smart grid to actually integrate the power system much more effectively, both with the generation system, but critically with the consumer demand and the ability for the consumer to have much more control over their own demand for energy.
Smart grids are really at the heart of that change. They're the digitised electrical infrastructure that's providing information about the state of the equipment, the flow of electricity, the demand for electricity, the available supply, and controlling the equipment on that grid as a result of the optimisation and the decisions that are made based on that information. We need to inform consumers about how they're using energy and how they could use it better. We need to help them to take smarter energy choices. Part of that's about providing them with information, part of that's about providing them with alternative commercial incentives, different pricing mechanisms.
I think what we need to do is ensure that people see a positive benefit to any activity, any lifestyle changes that they make. But I think the more we can explain to people, the more we can provide people with the data and information and tools for them to see the personal impact of those changes as well as the environmental impacts.
It's got to be a two-way partnership. People have got to actually want to accept this technology and want to use this technology to gain the benefit. And some of those things, even just from simple things like monitoring electricity, you can actually get, say people can save 20 to 30% on their bills, but they've got to want to do it.
Smart metering is a really interesting case because for many people this is simply a piece of technology that gives them a bit of information that they weren't sure they needed and enables the utility to reduce the cost of reading the meters. But that's really just the start of the journey. The smart metering is the end point of the smart grid. It's where the smart grid meets demand. The same technique applies to the gas network or the water network. The same principles of a smart grid apply. We're just moving molecules of water around rather than electrons.
If you think about water as a resource for a city, you need to think about the security of that water. So citizens need to be, cognizant of the fact that there's water there and that water is safe and secure and that there's a good, decent supply of it. When you think about cities as well, you need to think about how water moves around the city and the carbon impact of that water actually moving around the city too. We're working with organisations that have sensors deployed, and we're helping them, I suppose, to bring intelligence or make sense of what was previously a very messy situation around water management. And we're helping them understand the dynamic of how things are working today, and using techniques such as modelling techniques and stream technology and stream analytics, we're helping them answer the questions of tomorrow. So we're able to plan for our future in a very smart way too.
If you think about the future world where we have mobile demand for electricity in the form of electric vehicles, we have intermittent supply of electricity in the form of wind generation, tidal generation, wave generation, we have the relatively less controllable generation from mass micro domestic generation, whether that's renewable or combined heat and power, there's a need for a much more intelligent mediation between the supply side and the demand side.
We've got CO2 reduction targets, but we've also got to deliver secure energy and sustainable energy and affordable energy, and that's the critical issue. And I think what we're seeing now is that the scale of challenge that we've got requires quite radical solutions. Business as usual is not going to deliver the answer. Making the low-carbon energy world of the future work is going to require really complex information management capability, and companies like IBM are at the forefront of delivering this through activities such as their Smarter Planet initiative.
I think all of us, if you're talking about how do we feel as users of transport, I think we all want in our generation is a more efficient system, more reliable. And that's going to come through a mixture of investment in new infrastructure, but critically, and this is where I think IBM can add huge value, is optimising the existing assets and getting better use out of those assets, making it easier for the customer to interact with the transport system in terms of payments and getting real-time information.
We look at cities like Singapore, where they're now monitoring traffic so that it can actually predict where congestion is going to happen and reroute traffic. We need to look at integrating the public transport systems much more efficiently, so people will tend to use those as opposed to driving. I think that there's not one simple solution. I think we have to look at a whole raft of solutions to address the one problem.
I think we need more integrated public transport in our cities. London has got the Oyster card. Why don't other big cities outside of London have a smart card system so that people can travel through all sorts of different modes of transport on the same card?
Our vision is to have a single account, whether you're paying for tube, bus or congestion charging, or if you're paying for parking, for example.
I think what we're saying on transport is there's high-speed rail, that's great, but it's not the only show in town. That there are smaller transport investments, for example improving bus services, that would have a really significant impact on some of our cities.
The provision of the sort of smarter transport infrastructure is a win-win both for the Transport Authority and the customer. I think what we're seeing is very strong examples of where intelligent transport systems are helping the client in terms of the network optimization. They're taking cost out of the provisioning of transport. But then for the customer, critically, it's a win-win as well, because they're getting easier ways of paying, but also better information in their travel. So I think when we look at cities around the world, we're seeing a balance between supporting the transport operator, but critically the customer.
24% of UK CO2 emissions come from transport, and over half of that comes from cars and light vans. All the vehicle manufacturers are taking forward electric vehicles and hybrid electric vehicles, but the real question we've got is how will consumers actually want to use those vehicles, and what kind of infrastructure, both electricity supply and also the charging and the billing systems that people are going to use, how are they actually going to pay for these things?
Well, Sunderland's at the heart of the preparations for the electric vehicle. We already, through our work with Nissan and the assistance of central government, have a battery plant going to be built at Nissan to produce the batteries for electric cars. We're supporting that by the development of an infrastructure around charging points in the city that will make those electric cars a real opportunity. In addition to that, we're continuing working with our transport partners to modernise public transport. And the latest development for Sunderland is with the Integrated Transport Authority. We are purchasing a fleet of electric buses that are going to be working in and around the city centre as a sort of precursor to the bigger breakthrough that we see coming in transport overall in terms of sustainable, low-carbon transport.
I think interfacing with third parties is critical. If you take London's congestion charge, I think there's over 20 key third parties that we need to interface with, both at a business level and at a system level. So understanding that interface design and then being able to implement that is critical. And also through the operation of the scheme, making sure that integration works continually in the provision of what is a live service.
One of the most exciting things IBM's involved in is a thing called the Battery 500 project. This is a project being led out of our Almondden Research Labs with a consortium of other organisations, academic, public bodies and industrial companies. So Battery 500 is aimed at a family vehicle, 4-seaters, 200 horsepower, 500 mile plus range on a single charge. So that's an example of IBM using our research capability to try and change the game in the future, whereas at the same time we're also working with the technology that exists now to make a change today.
I guess the biggest challenge is around resources. Everybody now, whether it's a business, whether it's local authority, whether it's the urban regeneration company, everybody's strapped for cash, everybody's struggling to meet their priorities, and we're having to become more and more ingenious, if you like, to get people collaborating to find solutions that are more cost effective.
There's a lot of debate about greening cities' economies, reducing carbon footprint. I think some of the more difficult questions about sustainable green growth over the next few years is going to be which cities are going to benefit from the jobs that's going to come with reducing our carbon footprint, and is there a tension between going for economic growth on the one hand and reducing cities' carbon footprint on the other. They're more difficult questions.
In the commercial space in cities, for example, we've got the issue of a huge number of legacy buildings that weren't built with energy efficiency in mind. So we need to figure out how we can run those buildings, how people can live and work within those buildings in a different way so that we use less water, less energy, create less waste.
Around 60% of the buildings that exist today are likely to still be around in 2050, by which time we need to have almost decarbonised the entire building stock. And therefore, we have to make huge improvements to the carbon emissions from existing buildings. We can't just focus on developing low and zero carbon new buildings.
A smarter building is a building that integrates the instrumentation, and there's been instrumentation in buildings for many, many years, but it integrates that. It connects it and pulls that information together on a building level, and then starts to pull it across the portfolio, and then starts to do intelligent things across the portfolio. The bit that we are bringing to this is actually bringing technology to get better utilisation. You can now start to flex the demand of the use of a building over a day or over portions of a day, and close down systems and open up systems depending on the numbers of people that are actually using the building at any one time. and that will have a major impact in terms of energy usage and operational costs on a portfolio.
And so having that flexible environment means you can reduce your overheads significantly. You can reduce the amount of fixed asset you need to provide for all your workforce, whether that's provided through home working, whether it's provided through mobile working, working on client sites. There's a whole range of opportunities that opens up. But it also allows us to be more responsive. So having that ability to be connected with what's happening in the world, wherever you are, and be able to respond to that as and when is appropriate for that individual and for that enterprise.
Understanding as individuals, as families, as communities, as organisations and businesses, as sectors, how to change, and winning the argument to change the way we behave, the way we interact, the way we work is the key to success in this. And the more that we're able to do that, the more the markets will be created, the more confidence will be created to invest in those markets, and more the opportunity will be realised.
I think as a city grows as well, we should look at it as a very positive thing. Growth in a city can provide facilities that currently don't exist. It can provide a test bed for new technologies, new approaches, can then inform what you do with existing buildings, businesses, lifestyles and so on. So from my perspective, growth is a very positive thing when one looks at sustainability.
IBM's role is providing the digital infrastructure that sits alongside that physical fabric of the city to help people make more intelligent choices, to help the people who are managing the infrastructure, whether we're talking about the buildings, the transportation system or the utility networks, to optimise those so that they deliver better results using less resources.